Hey, welcome back to another Black Tea Coffee vlog. In this video, I'm just going to answer a question. And this is great. I urge you guys to ask specific questions, and I got specific questions, which I love, so good job. This comes from Tesla was here. Here's the question. I'm uncertain how roast automation isn't relied on more. If a curve can be relied on when using a certain grain, how can there be any inconsistencies? If there are inconsistencies in mind, either the theory behind the curve or the what is measured is wrong. Thoughts? Okay, so I think I'm getting your question, which is a couple things. Why isn't automation used more? And then second question in there is how can there be any inconsistencies if you are automating roasting or you're following a roast curve? Okay. So two good questions in there. So automation, I don't know how many people use automation. Like even the hot top that I had before then had an automation cycle, right? Like before you could plug it in into Artisan, there was the version before that, like the first version, where you could hit P1, P2, P3, like that program 1, 2, and 3, and it would do it for you. Those roast, I remember the automation, it would roast your coffee, but I believe it would take a really long time. But you could definitely automate it for sure. Now, is that coffee going to taste the best? Is it going to have the most popped, or is it just maybe going to taste like, because I remember those automation programs, like even in my hot top, my version, which you could plug into Artisan, it had a program that it would be taking like 20 minutes long to roast coffee. And you could do that, right? Like roasting is basically just browning coffee. It's turning green coffee, raw coffee into cooked coffee or browned coffee, right? You're roasting it. So that's all roasting means. Technically, that's all it really means. To roast and present coffee as specialty coffee is a whole other realm. That's what I'm trying to do, which is like it has to score a certain way. It is sourced a certain way and all kinds of stuff. Automation has been used, and it's not like it's a bad thing. It's definitely you would want consistency from automation. That's kind of the whole point, and to scale up your business, right? You wouldn't have to rely on a human. And another way that I've seen it most recently in a professional setting was at Clutch. And my interpretation that I got from automation is it's fancy, it has its uses, but it's not the regular way of doing things. Let me continue that sentence. For a coffee roastery that wants to stay on top of their quality control all the time. So Clatch, I saw as a company that was like always cupping every day, testing, making sure all of their products taste great. And so I didn't see somebody once use that during the time that I was there, in the 3 days that I was there only. He said that they used it sometimes, you know, it's cool, it's like it's fancy, it's really expensive, but it's not something that they relied upon. They had a head roaster there. His name was John. Didn't say nothing. Didn't say a word while we were there. It was very just like task oriented. He knew what he was doing. He was roasting on this like, I don't know, 26 kilo machine. He would let and help guide all the other roasters who were there, and there would be about 4 of them, I want to say. I'm not sure. And I think maybe that's if they have an incredibly huge order. They know that they have a coffee that does well with automation, right? It doesn't do anything weird or funky or have any weird stuff going on with it where you need a human behind the roaster to make critical decisions. So yeah, I would assume commercial coffee places do for sure, like maybe Starbucks, maybe places that produce a ton of coffee, like tons and tons and tons of coffee. Big coffee wholesalers would probably use automation. Small guys like me, and even, you know, a company like Clutch is small compared to Starbucks. I think it just depends on the scale. So if your question is why aren't people using automation more? I'm sure people do. It just depends on what you're trying to do, because automation, like everything else, is just a tool. So it depends on your goals. It depends on what you're trying to do with your business, right? I think in the specialty coffee realm, I think it'd be really helpful if, say, you got a wholesale order, you know that profile, you can run it perfectly, boom, hit the automation, you got tons of coffee to ship out, hit it, and you had that money. But if you're maybe something like me and you don't have automation, you have to do yourself. You have to do manually. You have to sit there and manually try to trace your curves of a good profile that you made, right? If a curve can be relied on when using a certain green, how can there be inconsistencies? Okay, so the inconsistencies question. Good question. Green coffee, raw coffee has a shelf life. Now it can stay drinkable, meaning you can still drink it. You won't die from drinking old green coffee, meaning like what they call past crop. So like this year is 2021, right? So past crop would be 2020 or 2019, 2018, so on and so forth. So whenever it was harvested, and it's still sitting there in your inventory, we would call that past crop. It's still drinkable. It just may not have the same taste and flavor and body characteristics. Maybe even moisture has definitely decreased over time as it's just sitting there. Especially if we don't know, how the green is being stored. If it's not in a temperature controlled area, like I try to keep my green in semi airtight containers, like they're covered. There's a seal around them. We're in a temperature controlled area. It doesn't get over 80 degrees in our home. So I'd say the shelf life of the green that I have here is pretty good, as long as I source this green from as fresh as I can. The thing is, over time, green will lose moisture. Water activity will change, and so you're gonna start to see just the overall quality of the green will start to degrade as time moves on. It's much slower than, say, if you roasted that coffee, because now roasted coffee now has like a shelf life of like for it to taste the best, maybe a month. If you can taste coffee that was freshly roasted on a certain date, and they say that if you taste it within 6 to 14 days, that's the range, right? That a lot of people kind of agree upon. I don't know if that's super, super, super true. I haven't tested it myself, but that's what they say. And if you have coffee at that time and it was a fresh crop, right? That's probably the most fresh coffee and best tasting coffee that you could serve yourself. Now the longer that it sits there, and even in a bag like this, a month after its roast date, you're probably hitting it at its very end of its best tasting cycle. And that kind of just depends on the storage of your bags as well. Are you storing them in heat like the green? Are they in a nice, temperature controlled area out of the sunlight? Are they in a dark bag like this, or is it like in a clear bag where sun can like peer through? Kind of think about wine or even olive oil, things like that, right? So like storage, are you storing it correctly, or storing it in a way that helps it live and be freshest the longest? Is it in a one-way valve bag, right, where it can off gas and no air can come back in? Have you not opened it yet? Now, if you opened it already, air has already gotten in here, so it's kind of compromised. But if it's a sealed bag like that, and it sits there for a month, this is going to be not much, but I don't know by much. I haven't tested again. I haven't tested it myself, but like this is going to be fresher. You can just tell from the aromas that kind of escape when you open a bag versus the bag that you've been opening since you got this coffee, right? And that's why we try to do things like put them in airtight containers that can vacuum out the air, stuff like that. So those are the inconsistencies that can happen in green. that I know about, right? There could be more. There could be like, say, like, I don't know, pest damage, um, regular, just like human stuff that happens to however you're storing your green, right? So I just talked about storage, talked about pests, talked about just overall time degrading the quality of the green over time. It just loses some of that spark. And I was able to taste that. Like, I was able to taste and learn and delineate what does an old coffee taste like. And that was important for me. So I go, oh, okay, good to know. Good to know. You know? So those are the inconsistencies that can happen. Now, when that happens to your green and the quality of the green has changed in some way, that will in turn affect your roast. So even though you have a nice little profile curve there, it may not behave the same way. It may not behave the same way. It could move faster, right? It could move faster because now the basically like the density has changed, the water activity has changed, the moisture levels have changed, all that stuff has changed within the green, so it's not roasting the same way or behaving the same way as it did when you first got it. So those are the inconsistencies, and that's why sometimes, more than likely, you know, and this is probably why Klatch chooses to have a human head roaster who understands that, right? Who understands that what's the quality of this green? How has it behaved in the when we first got it to like, you know, a couple months ago to now, right? There's going to be those changes, and that's why you always cup, because maybe say something's going weird in the roast curve or something like that, but you cup it and say maybe it tastes fine, maybe it tastes horrible, or whatever, right? So there's a chain in the process of like from green to roasted, and I love this saying that I heard a long time ago, which was like, I always heard that coffee is alive, even when it's green. Of course, green just kind of means life, right? But even when it's not roasted yet, and it's already left the farm, and it's already been shipped to you, the roaster, and it's sitting there in the tub, it's still alive. There's still something going on in there. It's always kind of changing, you know, in a very molecular level, which is super cool if you can geek out about that. And that's what you're dealing with. There's so many little variables on that molecular level to being at the roaster. Now, you can have that with the green. Now let's talk about the roaster, the inconsistencies that can happen there. Number one, the big one is you as a human. Maybe you're like, I don't know, you're off. You're not present. Maybe you're, I don't know, not paying attention. Maybe you didn't call yellow when you're supposed to call yellow, like things like that. Okay, so there's a human element, human error. Second, ambient temperature and conditions. Is it a hot summer's day? Is it a cold tundra winter night? Is it swarming with flies outside of your establishment like it is here? It's disgusting. Are your vents clean? Right? When's the last time you cleaned your vents? Is your chaff container full? Are all of your bells and whistles and roaster thingies working? All that stuff, you know? So there's all these like environmental inconsistencies that, or variables, you can call them variables, that are always at play, no matter what. So I think that's why, in a way, if you're dealing with high level, high quality, expensive green, maybe you don't want to just automate that because it's risky. It costs you money if that automation fails in some way, right? Or doesn't present the flavors that you were looking for when you cupped it, when you're at the sample cupping table, right? When you did your sample roast. So that's another reason why automation may not be, maybe that you see automation not be being used as frequently. I definitely get turned off by automation, because to me automation means like on a personal level, I'm like, oh, it's not like handcrafted. Nobody was paying attention. They just hit start and maybe hit drop, or maybe it dropped automatically too, right? So I don't like that personally. I like someone to be there and kind of like, you know, caress it through all the little things that happen. I like that with a lot of my products that I purchase. So Personally, that just kind of like tickles my fancy. But on a business level, where it's like, bro, I spent top dollar for this green. I'm not going to automate it. I'm going to make sure I have somebody down there, or it's me, somebody that I trust, and make sure they take care of and honor, right? We honor the cup here, honor that coffee, roast it the right way, and make sure that we're presenting everything that the farmer intended, right? Things like that. So, and that's also to make sure, like, hey, I bought this and I think it's great. I think it's exciting. I'm not gonna automate it. I'm gonna roast this with love. I'm gonna roast it with care, right, and attention. And then we're gonna make a production out of it. We're gonna package it really nice, and we're gonna present it to our customers, who we love and care about as well. So I think in all the little chains of of business and of roasting coffee, it's another way to show your love, to honor the cup, to quality control, and for the most part, to make the best coffee that you can make. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, and thanks for the question. I think that was a really good question, and I like when you guys are specific, because we can have better answers and better conversation. All right, see you in the next one. Bye.